Hello everyone, and welcome back.
Pose donc ça là-bas.
Um,
Et ça.
this is the second part to the Parkour series for Assassin's Creed
Tiens,
Unity
toi.
Developer View.
Pose donc ça
So in
là-bas.
this episode
Et
I'll
ça.
be talking about a couple things. The first one I'll be talking about is actually the side-to-side corner edge detection,
Ça, c'est de la
which
viande.
is a pretty hefty problem
Messieurs,
in a
et
lot
toi,
of climbing
particulièrement hideux.
systems, simple or complicated like this one is. So, first,
Particulièrement hideux.
if we notice this corner, it'll actually go around the building. If you notice right now, there's like a very simple kind of climbing left looping animation, but right here in the corner, this character needs to know what to do so that instead of, let's say, jumping across, he turns the corner. And the way that it looks like Assassin's Creed has decided to solve this problem is by just introducing a uh, separate animation for traversing corners. As you can see here, I'm going between left and right, and you can see how he tackles these corners. And the ability to actually make that curve between there and going over to here is a combination of the animation and what's called root controller. The adjusting the root controller of a character is when you're looking at like animation reels and you see like, let's say, a running animation and the character's just kind of running in one spot. It's really what's happening is you have this animation playing, and then you have the root controller is stationary. So there's an animation playing, but the character's not moving. But for when you're going left and right, the first thing that you want to set up is when you're saying that you want your character to actually move left and then to apply a visual animation on it, what you're doing is moving the root controller and then letting the animation on top. And so you can choose to let the animation take control over the root controller, which is things that you see more in like motion capture. So in this one, by having they may have temporarily allowed the animation to take control of the root controller to make that corner, and then give it back to the player so that they can, do whatever they want. So if you look there and then you look over on this side, you'll see an interior corner, and they have a separate animation that takes control of this instance compared to the outside one. So that's one way of getting around it, and I thought I'd mention that because it is a kind of a weird issue that a lot of people with climbing systems have problems getting around.
Pose donc ça
So
là-bas.
the second one that I want to talk about is this ladder, and
Tu m'aimes particulièrement
this
hideux.
this ladder is very interesting in getting to know of the system that they're using here. So this ladder, if you walk up to it, you can climb up the ladder. However, if we just take it one step at a time by just slowly pressing the
Tu
W
m'aimes
key,
particulièrement
you
hideux.
can see how the excuse me, you can see how the arms and legs move through the ladder. So I'm taking it one step at a time, and you see how the leg goes exactly to that spot. But right here, notice that there was that glitch where the leg actually glitched downwards because it's kind of like in this
Tu
weird
m'aimes
in-between zone.
particulièrement hideux.
And then if I take another step forward, he skips an entire step. So that kind of gives insight to where what it's trying to do, at least with the ladder situation,
Pose donc ça
is
là-bas.
it's
Et
locating
ça.
the player's location compared to the ladder, where on the
Tu
ladder
m'aimes
it is.
particulièrement hideux.
And it has kind of like a predefined stepping set on the ladder where it says when you're in this location, put the left foot there and then the right foot there, so on and so
Et
forth.
ça.
And this is all done through the skeletal control, or the skeletal IK system.
Et tout ça,
And
c'est de la
I also
viande.
forgot to mention, IK stands for inverse kinematics. And if you look at the foot placement tutorial that I have in the Unreal Engine 4 tutorial playlist, I talk all about IK and what it means and so on and so forth. I also mentioned a little bit in the previous parkour video how the IK system works. So I actually think that for climbing the ladder, there's not much actual animation done here. That it's all driven through the well, that it's all driven by the IK system. So there was actually a game called Overgrowth, which was made with Unreal Engine 3 by an indie developer. And Overgrowth, the person who created it is he is not a animator, or he knows a little bit of 3D modeling, but he definitely was not an animator. And he wanted to be able to work on his game, so he approached animation in a more, I guess, more programming sense, by allowing, or by working more with IKs. So really, for the animation that he had, let's say for like a running animation, he had 4 keyframes that defined like the 4 biggest movements with that, such as the left leg moves forward while the right hand is kind of bent in a running pose. But he had 4 keyframes, and then using very nice blending and skeletal controls through like the physics, he was able to simulate a very, very nice running animation. And really, he did that for all of the animations in the game. So I encourage you to look at Overgrowth and to view some of the videos of Overgrowth and see what I mean. Because the animations look very well done. But there was actually very little animation involved. So that's one way that you can definitely approach here. Now, one thing that I need to mention is the interaction between the player's input and this entire parkour system too. So the parkour system is made up of a couple different components. One is the player's input. So there's the normal walking when you're just pressing W. There's the pressing W and shift, which causes him to run and to do some mild parkour for like more close-up objects. If you press W, shift, and space, then he has a more active approach and always looking to go higher. And then there's the new rundown feature, which is pressing W, shift, and E, which causes the character to want to go down. And it's interesting because really that drives how the character wants to behave. Because when you're just pressing shift and W, he's going to climb, but not as aggressively, as you can see here. If you press shift, W, and space, then he's going to want to do a little bit more jumping, and more kind of like an active ascension. And then the same thing with if you're pressing W, shift, and E, he's going to want to climb down very fast. Yeah, there we go. Okay. So the input kind of tells where it should go and scout and how aggressive. Now, because they were doing this entire thing through edge detection, which means that all of these surfaces here can be grabbed on. What I think that they decided to do, and really all of this is through my observation, I'm not entirely sure of how the system is done, but the way that I think it's done is through putting kind of like a priority on certain areas based off of their normals. So if you're coming down from this one, a good spot to go down on would probably be right here, as compared to like over here, or probably right there is nice also. But like from here going down to, let's say, the window area, he would be less likely to jump inside the window, more so on the top. However, if you do like try these type of tests and go towards and try doing it, there's a little bit of a randomness introduced to this. So yeah, now I'm descending downwards, and looks like he just decided to skip a lot of it. But I think that there is some randomness in its decision. So it would say, okay, yeah, that would be a nice area to put my hands, but really any of this area is fair game too. So it will jump in there. And by introducing like this randomness in the choice, it gives a more dynamic feel to the parkour system instead of just the same zones every single time. Uh, so, uh, so yeah, the blend between the player's input based off of what keys they choose, which determines, like, let's say the distance that he jumps down from, or if he just drops down, like when you're pressing the W, Shift, and E. See how he just drops. The importance of where to grab and the randomness kind of ties in this whole thing and creates a pretty solid parkour system. And really, one of the biggest things about Assassin's Creed is that. And, it's quite nice. It's very nice how they did the system. So, that is really all I have to say about the parkour system. The next area that we'll be talking about is the combat, and the the difference between like the active combat and how they develop that area of the game, to the assassinations and how it does its calculations and whatnot. There is two more side notes that I'm going to also mention, which has to do about two other aspects of the parkour system. So the two other zones are how when it does its running and it drops below a certain area, like when he slides under an object. I don't think I can find one in this area that can really demonstrate it. Maybe in this building. But so there's that, and then there's also jumping over smaller objects such as this wall here. And how does he choose to do some of the things versus some of the other ones, which requires a little bit more of a climbing feature? So the way that it does this is through line traces. For those that are new to Unreal, a line trace is a detection method. It's a detection method that goes from a certain area to another area and checks to see if there's any objects there, or if that line is being obstructed by anything. And so if Assassin's Creed is doing line traces, the most common thing, which you can kind of see in one of the tutorial series that I did about the foot placement, is doing a line trace, like going from the foot outwards to about that far, and then from the knees, from the hips, from the chest, and from the head. And there's maybe one just a little bit above the head. And by doing those type of line traces, you can kind of gauge the height of objects. So, for example, this one right here. You would do a line trace from the foot, and it would hit the object, and so that one's cleared. Then you would do one from, or then it would, essentially it's like, oh, okay, so the object is higher than the foot. Then you do one from the knee, the object's higher from the knee. Then you do one from the hip, it would say the object's higher from the hip. Then if you did one from the chest, in this case it would actually hit it. However, there is a difference in where it was hit. While the hip, knee, and foot was close, the other one was a little bit farther. So it's saying, okay, the object directly in front of you is about between hip height to chest height. And so based off of that new information, the character knows how to interact either with a animation or with a skeletal control that can kind of guess where that secondary object is, and so it chooses to do it like that. For something a little bit higher, such as this kind of wheelbarrow here, or not wheelbarrow, it's like a chariot, or anyways, it would do line traces that goes basically all the way up, and it would say, okay, so the object, or those line traces collides with all parts of there. So it's higher than the player's head. And so it will start to do the whole climbing thing and then determine, okay, that's where I need to grab. And it basically treats it like as if it's a wall. With something that is where he slides under, he would do the line trace from the foot, and let's say the foot doesn't collide. Okay, but the knee collides, then it'll say, okay, there's a gap and you could probably slide underneath it, and so it does that. Or if it does the foot and the knee does not collide and the hip collides, it does the same thing. Another instance is if there's kind of like a low-hanging branch or something, to do the foot, the knee, the hips, and the chest does not collide, but the head collides, for him to just kind of duck under and not do much. Yeah, so there's, depending on the information that you kind of gather from that, you can choose what to do. Yeah. So anyways, I wanted to mention that too, because it's kind of important. So next we're going to be talking about this awesome combat system. So stay tuned for the next episode, and I'll see you then. Make sure to like, favorite, and subscribe, and I'll see you then.